It's been called a disaster, the grounding and sinking of HMNZS Manawanui off the coast of Samoa, the first peacetime loss of a New Zealand Navy vessel. The $100 million vessel had 75 people on board, all have been rescued. Manawanui hit a reef at 6:46 last night while on a survey trip. An attempt to get off reef failed. It began listing and at 7:52 it was decided to abandon ship using 4 life rafts and 2 inflatable boats. One of those inflatables flipped in dangerous dark conditions and 2 people have been hospitalised. The first rescues off the life rafts came at 1 a.m. and all people were accounted for by 5:35 this morning. At 6:40 the Manawanui flames became visible and at 9 a.m. it capsized and sank. Zane Small has more now on this disaster, which will also be a major environmental issue.
Smoke billowing across the Pacific Ocean.
Oh, look at that Northland.
This is likely the last we'll see of the HMNZS Manawanui, a $100 million New Zealand Navy ship commissioned by former Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern in 2019.
From this moment, Manawanui will come to represent our country.
Today, though, it represents a massive loss for our Defence Force.
I can confirm at 6:40 a.m. today, the ship was listing heavily and smoke was visible from the ship. At 9 a.m, it was known to have capsized and is now below the surface.
These were some of the last images taken of the ship in its final moments, before it sank off the southern coast of Samoa, where crew had been conducting surveying of the coast. 7 scientists were on board.
There will obviously be an inquiry, a court of inquiry, to establish exactly what caused this incident. I look forward to pinpointing the cause so that we can learn from it and avoid a repeat.
What we do know is the vessel was grounded on a reef just before 7 last night.
Made attempts to get himself off the reef. Those attempts were unsuccessful. Then the ship started to list and at 19:52 the commanding officer made the decision to evacuate.
All 75 crew and passengers evacuated onto 4 lifeboats and 2 inflatable rafts, and were eventually picked up by numerous vessels that came to assist. It was dark, the conditions were rough, and one of the boats flipped. All of those passengers made it to shore and were met by Samoan authorities.
2 have been hospitalised.
The Defence Minister praised Navy personnel for their bravery and perseverance.
Everyone came through, and that, I have to say, is down to the professionalism, the training and their own courage.
But there are major implications, not least of all the mounting concerns about a potential oil spill from the vessel, reported by the Samoan Observer news outlet.
So on the C-130 that's departing this afternoon, we have a dive team on board with salvage equipment, and that will be depth dependent, as well as a spill kit.
The ship sinking also represents an enormous financial hit for the Defence Force.
We're pretty much being cut down to the bone. This kind of loss will have a big impact trying to replace it, and so it's not even about trying to keep up with our competitors or our friends. We're going to have a gap now. And so that's going to have to be some difficult budgetary questions for the government to replace this.
The primary concern today has been around the welfare of the crew and the passengers on board and the environmental side. But as for the money, I have not actually asked about that, but I'm sure things are in the usual way.
A conundrum for the government that's about as big as the ship that's just sunk.
Well, Zane joins me now. And Zane, how serious are the environmental concerns following the sinking?
Well, there are already reports out of Samoa of the smell of oil. That alone could be the start of an environmental disaster, but also shipwrecks represent a whole lot of long-term issues. I asked the Defence Minister today how likely it was that this ship could be salvaged, and she really did not seem convinced. Al Gillespie told me it's likely that to maintain our relationship with Samoa, our government will probably do whatever it takes to make sure this isn't an environmental disaster, despite what could be an enormous cost. Speaking of cost, in the past hour, ACT leader David Seymour has said the loss of a $100 million ship is, quote, significant and alarming, and he says New Zealanders deserve some accountability.